What do we do here? We report the news. Honestly, fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, which is not news. No, commentary is opinion, both yours and mine. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Let's take you to the U.S. District Courthouse in Delaware as we begin our broadcast today. You can see that is the entrance that will shortly be used by Hunter Biden as he goes to court. We're assuming he's going to go to court. There has been some intrigue regarding this particular court proceeding, insofar as this is the day that Hunter Biden is supposed to plead guilty in federal court in a plea deal arrangement that may be up in the air. Let me give you the news from Fox News. Hunter Biden is set to make his first court appearance at a Delaware court, and he is expected to plead guilty to misdemeanor tax charges and a federal firearms charge this morning, stemming from the years-long federal investigation into his tax affairs. President Biden's son is expected to appear in front of Judge Mary Ellen Noriega at 10 a.m. In other words, he's supposed to be there as we speak. He's 53 years old. He agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of willful failure to pay federal income tax and that weapons charge. U.S. Attorney for the District of Delaware, David C. Weiss's office, said if convicted, Hunter Biden faces a maximum penalty of 12 months in prison on each of the tax charges, a total of 2 years. The maximum penalty is 10 years in prison on the firearms charge, for which he agreed to a pretrial diversion program. By the way, there is this intrigue that I was discussing, and that is kind of serious. What ended up happening is that first son Hunter Biden's legal team appeared to pull a dirty trick yesterday to block the release of damning evidence ahead of his expected guilty plea in federal charges, or 2 federal charges of tax evasion and weapons crimes. This, by the way, from the New York Post. And as we discuss this, you need to keep in mind the New York Post is, in this particular article, a bit biased, so we're pointing that out to you. The House Ways and Means Committee filed an amicus brief to Delaware U.S. District Judge Mary Ellen Noriega, arguing that the 53-year-old had benefited from political interference, which calls into question the propriety of the investigation into alleged crimes, including money laundering, felony tax evasion, and failure to register as a foreign agent. The filing included testimony by 2 IRS whistleblowers who sat for transcribed interviews on May 26th and June 1st. The committee's top lawyer, Theodore Katila, at approximately 1:30 p.m., we received word our filing was removed from the docket. We promptly contacted the clerk's office. We were advised that someone contacted the court representing that they worked with my office, that is Katila's office, and that they were asking the court to remove this from the docket. We immediately advised the clerk's office that this was inaccurate, said Katila. They responded that we would have to refile. We have done so now. The woman who called was Jessica Bengals. This was confirmed by court official Samantha Grimes. She said that Bengals worked with Theodore Katila and that it was important that the document was removed immediately or they could file a motion to seal. I do deeply apologize for the confusion on our part, said one of the attorneys from the New York-based law firm of Latham and Watkins. The Hunter Biden attorney Chris Clark was formerly a partner. In an order yesterday evening, Judge Mary Ellen Noriega gave Hunter Biden's attorneys until 9 p.m. today to, quote, show cause as to why sanctions should not be considered for misrepresentations to the court, unquote, while noting they had not formally filed any request to seal the evidence in the matter. However, she also ordered the filing sealed until close of business today. Elsewhere in Biden world, from Fox News, Speaker McCarthy says the Biden case will rise to impeachment. He made that statement. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy predicted that Republicans will gather enough evidence soon to mount an impeachment inquiry against President Biden as the corruption scandal enveloping him and his son Hunter continues to grow. As we go to that, let me take you back to the courthouse, as there is frank activity going on here as we wait for the arrival of Hunter Biden. Getting back to the president, McCarthy made reference to a relatively new revelation from the White House Oversight Committee, the House Oversight Committee. While Joe was vice president, Hunter Biden capitalized on a financial relationship with a Romanian national later convicted on corruption charges. According to prepared remarks from the House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, the Bidens received more than $1 million in 17 increments. McCarthy said yesterday that 16 of those 17 payments went to what he was described as Biden shell companies while President Biden was vice president. Elsewhere, President Biden raised eyebrows yesterday with a stunning claim during a speech on the expansion of mental health care in the East Room of the White House. It happened yesterday afternoon, where he said there was no difference between a broken arm and a mental breakdown. He also said that, quote, "We ended cancer as we know it." In the same speech, President Biden said that over 100 people died of COVID-19 during the pandemic. Here's the quote: "We're still feeling the profound loss of a pandemic, as I mentioned, of over 100 people dead. That's 100 empty chairs around kitchen tables, every single loss. There are so many people left behind and broken folks." That was a quote from the president. President Biden's dog Commander has attacked several Secret Service personnel. It's happened multiple times. CBS News reports the president's dog on numerous occasions attacked and at times injured Secret Service personnel. This according to federal documents released this week by the Department of Homeland Security. 10 alleged attacks by Mr. Biden's German Shepherd named Commander were detailed in 194 redacted pages of Secret Service emails, text messages, and workers' compensation filings obtained by the conservative group Judicial Watch through a request under the Freedom of Information Act. The attacks took place over an approximate 4-month period between October of 2022 and January of 2023. None of the injuries described in the documents were described as serious. USA Today reports that Rudy Giuliani now admits to making false statements. Former Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani conceded he made false statements about 2 Georgia election workers he accused of rigging the 2020 election and counting extra votes. His latest court filing is an attempt to resolve their litigation against him. It also says he refuses to accept statements that his statements caused damage to the plaintiffs, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, who said they faced harassment and death threats after former President Donald Trump accused them of committing election fraud. Giuliani maintains his latest admission should not affect his argument that his statements about the 2020 election are constitutionally protected by the First Amendment. Judge John Tiger is a judge. He's a federal judge in the California Northern District Court. Yesterday, he blocked President Biden's controversial asylum policy, delivering a major blow to the administration, which has leaned on the measure to drive down border crossings. The judge put the ruling on hold for 14 days, allowing for a possible appeal. The ruling against the Biden administration could have major implications on the U.S.-Mexico border, where crossings have plummeted since the rollout of the asylum policy, among other measures. A Justice Department spokesperson told CNN the department plans to appeal. Quote, "The Justice Department disagrees with the district court's ruling today in the East Bay case and intends to appeal the decision and to seek a stay pending that appeal." Judge Tiger previously ruled against a similar policy under the Trump administration and expressed skepticism that there was any daylight between the Biden policy and the Trump-era one during a court hearing last week. Also today, there are many, many House Oversight and Judiciary Committee hearings. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas will testify this morning before the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee. It's expected to be a serious grilling over his handling of the U.S. border with Mexico. CNN reports the hearing comes days after the Department of Justice sued Texas over the use of its floating barriers in the Rio Grande, which Governor Greg Abbott has argued is intended to deter migrants from crossing into the state from Mexico. Today's panel also comes as the House GOP conference is considering impeaching Mayorkas. In the various impeachment articles against the cabinet secretary that have already been filed, he is accused of undermining the operational control of the southern border, encouraging illegal immigration, and lying to Congress that the border was secure, all charges that the administration has dismissed. Also, NBC News reports the GOP-led House Judiciary Committee said yesterday that it plans to take up a resolution that would recommend a contempt of Congress citation for Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg over what Republicans insist is the social media company's refusal to comply with a wide-ranging investigation into allegations of censorship. The panel is also scheduled to consider a resolution on Thursday, escalating its probe into claims the Biden administration has worked with tech executives to suppress conservative viewpoints. A copy of the contempt record asserts that Zuckerberg and Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, have willfully refused to comply in full with a congressional subpoena stemming from the panel's investigation into any efforts by the executive branch to encourage social media companies to moderate content on digital platforms. Also today, 3 witnesses are set to appear before the House Oversight Committee on National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs. They are expected to testify the United States government should share information and intelligence it has with the American people concerning unidentified aerial phenomena, previously known as unidentified flying objects. The witnesses include Dave Grush. He's an intelligence officer for 14 years in the U.S. Air Force at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Ryan Fobbs Graves, a former F-18 pilot with over a decade of service in the United States Navy. And David Fravor, a retired commander in the Navy, who was also the commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 41, the world-famous Black Aces. Grush and Graves are expected to testify how the government keeps its knowledge of UAPs secret, even to lawmakers, while Fravor is expected to talk about the advanced technologies, which are potentially extraterrestrial, that intelligence service have witnesses, the intelligence services have witnessed in several recent years. Just as wise, the Florida Supreme Court on Monday of this week publicly reprimanded Judge Elizabeth Scherer, who oversaw the Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz penalty trial, for showing bias toward the prosecution. The unanimous decision from the state's highest court adopted the recommendations of the Judicial Qualifications Commission, which found she had engaged in inappropriate behavior. The commission criticized Scherer for stepping down from the bench and hugging several prosecutors shortly after she had sentenced Cruz, 24 years of age, to prison. In her defense, she told the state commission, which is tasked with investigating allegations of judicial misconduct, that she'd also offered hugs to Cruz's lawyers. Quote, "In limited instances during this unique and lengthy case, Judge Scherer allowed her emotions to overcome her judgment." This, according to the 15-member commission, writing their report filed June 2nd.